I am delighted to be joined today by Alex Castellanos, who is a political consultant and occasional contributor to The Spectator. And we are going to be talking about last night's primaries, which were pretty interesting, I thought, on a number of levels. Alex, you wrote an excellent piece for The Spectator, which we published yesterday, suggesting that the rise of the radical left for the Democratic Party is playing into the Republican Party's hands as the midterms approach. I think your thesis is vindicated to a certain extent because in the big race in Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed has won the race. It's a huge triumph, I think, for. I appreciate you smoking a cigar for this for this occasion.
It's a Cuban thing. It's mandatory.
I like it. So I think that is the big race, but it was closer than a lot of people think, and perhaps revealed, in fact, to prove your thesis, perhaps revealed that Michigan might not vote for Abdul come November.
It might not. Mandami won in New York City, but Michigan is not New York City. It is more of a working class state, a blue collar state. And so I think it's going to be a little tougher for him. However, and I do think it provides Republicans an opportunity because the Democrats are redefining their party as a party that is a welcome home for not only the radical left, but the socialist element beyond it, and even communists. They have said things like, if you want government to be able just to take private property, if you believe that the most radical positions, as Bernie Sanders said last night, we should provide wealth to everyone, not opportunity, not work, not the opportunity to earn wealth, but we should provide wealth to everyone. Those radical things, maybe not everybody in the Democratic Party believes them, but they have said those beliefs are welcome and are up for debate in the Democratic Party. So it does give Republicans an opportunity to rip off the mask and the pleasant mask and kind of see the socialist monster. But the Democrats have some advantages. One is generational. Right now, the Democratic Party is very old, very tired, very establishment, no ideas at all. And you have a populace that is discontented, that feels aggrieved, that really is having trouble paying for gasoline at the pump or to put food on the dinner table, and they are in revolt. So young people, highly educated younger women who don't often vote that much are motivated now. But the biggest advantage El-Sayed has is that the Democratic Party is led by a uniting force. The leader of the Democratic Party is Donald Trump. He's the one that motivates the Democrats. He's the one that brings them together after this fractured primary. So I wouldn't count El-Sayed or any of that out.
Well, I think it's very interesting because Donald Trump is this binding factor for the Democrats. And I'm not the first person to say this, lots of people have, there is a certain parallel to be drawn between what Donald Trump did to the Republican Party and what the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, might be about to do to the Democratic Party. And that is swallow a sort of tired old elite that have run out of ideas, that have no momentum, very little energy among the young. What do you think about that? Do you think that is a fair parallel?
Yes, I think so. I think it's a pretty good parallel. I never imagined, I'm from Cuba, I've seen the horrors of socialism up close and personal. I never imagined I would see the Democratic Party in the U.S. trying to climb back over the Berlin Wall to East Berlin. Uh, but they seem to be doing that. And Donald Trump erased the establishment in the Republican Party. He just conquered it because he harnessed this populist wave that said, you people that we trusted with power, the you establishment elites, aren't listening to us. The same thing is happening to the Democratic Party. But their revolt is being led by children who have never worked, who have never achieved, who have never built anything on their own, unlike the Republican revolt that was a working class, blue collar revolt of working people. The Democrat revolt is being led by overeducated college kids and service workers who can't achieve the life they want on their own, and so succumb to the politics of resentment. If we can't build wealth and success on our own, we will take it from those who have. So I do think there's a strong parallel, but the core beliefs radically different.
Yes, and I suppose the big difference is that for the MAGA movement was, I think it's fair to say, a sort of genuine expression of rage of the left behind in rural areas in particular, but of the white working class who felt that the elites had abandoned them. This revolution is, as you say, a downward trending bourgeoisie who are furious. And in fact, it's far more dangerous as a result, because there is nothing more dangerous than highly educated people who don't, and spoiled people, who don't feel they're getting what they feel they deserve. Before we go on, a word from our sponsors, Monetary Metals. What if your gold could actually earn more gold without you ever selling it? That's the idea behind Monetary Metals, a company changing the way investors think about gold ownership. For decades, owning gold meant paying storage fees and hoping the price went up. But Monetary Metals lets you put your gold to productive use through their gold leasing marketplace, earning up to 4% yield on gold paid in actual gold ounces, not dollars, more gold. So you maintain exposure to gold's long-term purchasing power while increasing the amount of metal you own over time. In a world dealing with inflation, debt expansion, and financial instability, that's a very different approach to wealth preservation. Thousands of investors are no longer relying solely on gold price appreciation. They've become Monetary Metals clients to accumulate more ounces of gold. Learn how to earn yield on gold paid in gold at monetary-metals.com/Americano.
Very dangerous. The Democratic Party started years ago, like a soccer team, football, as you call it. They started buying players with money, with government. They couldn't sell their party with success, that they helped achieve economic or social success, so they just started buying players. And now they've got to keep buying players and adding more, no matter how extreme their views. So I think what we're seeing is a Democratic Party driven by resentment of the mediocre, looking at exceptional people, successful people, and trying to drag them down. And the Democratic Party is now about validating the envy of the masses. At the end of the day, that's a very dark force. It's a very powerful force. Usually what happens is when you get the revolutionaries inside the tent, as the Democrats do now, and they begin to drive everything to the left, their first foray into an election, they get beaten because they're scary, they're different, they're not always telling the truth, but they normalize it. We get used to seeing them, and over time, they win. That may be different now because both parties are in such disrepute, because Trump is such a polarizing factor that unites the left. So I think right now we're in a situation where, despite the Democratic Party, the center of the Democratic Party moved way left last night. And Michigan is going to be the race that puts that peg in the ground and says, how far left has it gone? But that is what we're going to see this election. That's going to be the race to watch. I think what that means is Republicans are still going to lose the House of Representatives, maybe by 20 or so votes. I think the Senate is in play. But as scary as Donald Trump is, for the Democrats, now the Democratic Party itself is that scary for a lot of Republicans.
How much do you think corruption, or the perception of corruption, within sort of the Trump family, the Trump circle, and so on, that is a real problem for the Republicans, is it not, coming into November? Because you can argue against communism and socialism all you like, but if you are representing a government that is widely seen as kleptocratic and so on, then you're not standing on very solid ground, are you?
You're not. And I think that is a big issue, that I think that perception of corruption, that the Democrats, I know they will use it after the election. I know we'll have hearings, especially if and when they take the House. We'll be back to lawfare, as they call it, and that will be their focus. But I would not be surprised at all if the Democrats start using that as a political issue in September, and saying this kind of corruption, family corruption from the Trump family, whether they can validate it or not, that's going to be one of their most powerful issues. Why don't you have prosperity? Because they are stealing it. That's a pretty powerful argument. The campaign I hope we run before they run theirs is almost the same, but in reverse. What I hear from pollsters is that working class voters are saying, hey, Wall Street's doing great. Big companies and tech companies are doing fine, but I'm not feeling any progress, any prosperity. And I think the Republican argument should be, you know why? Because your prosperity is in the Democrats' corrupt pockets. They took a third of the tax money that flows through Washington and they gave it to USAID. They gave it to their NGOs. They gave it to their pals and friends. They then funnel that money back into elections. It's a Rube Goldberg machine of corruption, and we're talking about trillions of your tax dollars. Why aren't you feeling the prosperity? Because your prosperity is in the Democrats' pocket. Trillions of it. Take it back. I think it's important for the Trump folks and the Republicans to do the corruption argument first and bigger. By the way, it happens to be true.
Yeah. Well, you said Michigan is a stake in the ground. There's a big primary coming up next week, I think, in Wisconsin. Francesca Hahn running to be governor of Wisconsin. She is a DSA member, proud DSA member, extremely left-wing. One would think, sort of with a rudimentary knowledge of Wisconsin, one would think she is far too to the left of where the Wisconsin public are, but apparently she seems pretty popular. If she wins after El-Sayed wins Michigan, that sort of momentum for the radical left of the Democratic Party does start to take shape, doesn't it?
It is. I think Hong is wrong for the Democratic Party. She is way over her skis. I mean, when we think Thanksgiving is kind of a normal American thing. She thinks Thanksgiving should have been canceled years ago because it is culturally offensive that we celebrated taking what is the United States of America from the native population. Uh, that's weird. So I think it's going to be tougher for her. But what you're seeing is the center of the Democratic Party moving left, not in inches, not in feet, but in meters and miles. That is what's being normalized in the Democratic Party. And you've got a younger generation of voters that have no experience with work, with jobs, with building businesses. They went to college, they piled up massive debt, and they get nothing for it. They think the refrigerator should always be full. One of the things that I find striking about this is it reminds me of the old Broadway play Camelot, Richard Burton and Julie Andrews, King Arthur, where King Arthur said that in Camelot, it should never rain after sundown, and by 9 a.m. the morning fog must disappear. That's government decree. We just wish it so, and so it will be. The Democrats now have a population of voters who think they can do that the good things in society and for themselves don't have to be worked for or earned. They can just be decreed and taken. And that's a party that ultimately eats itself, but that is that party of resentment and envy that I think has just set these young folks on fire. And they're going to show up to vote because this is they don't see a future. Their parents, my generation, didn't educate them about how the world works, how capitalism has been the greatest force for good, that has lifted more people from misery than any idea in human history. We didn't educate them that. We just assumed they'd catch on, and they didn't.
Well, yes, I take all those points, but I mean, I do think there is a fundamental problem with inflation,
Yeah.
with the cost of living, and with the fact that a lot of middle class people, whether they are spoiled or not, I think they are just finding life extremely difficult because their expectations of sending their children to college, buying groceries, all those things, they're becoming democratic talking points, but they're becoming democratic talking points for a reason, because they speak to people.
I agree with you. It's not the reason they think, I would contend. They think it's because capitalism has failed. I think it's because socialism is succeeding. I think it's because the game is rigged. They're right. The big guys have rigged the game. But how did they do that? Well, they did it with the massive power and influence of government. When you make government entirely and incredibly complex, when you have endless pages of government regulation, when you complicate the structure of everyday life so much that a little business can't deal. If you're a little bank, you have to deal with the same regulation structures that Chase Bank has to deal with. You can't afford it. The big bank can. Who wins? Bernie Sanders has been the biggest friend of the powerful and the rich and the wealthy of any politician in America because he's made the game so complex that only the guys with the lawyers and the lobbyists and the money, they win. And what is the socialist answer? Why, make it even more complex. So that, I would say that's why those kids don't have a shot. I agree, they don't have a shot. But we haven't done a very good job of explaining that, hey, the rules are favoring the big guy, and the answer is not more rules. The answer is to open up a bottom-up society where everyone has equal opportunity to work hard, earn, and succeed.
Well, you are famous, Alex, for political attack ads, and I think capitalism isn't failing, socialism is succeeding is a brilliant message.
Socialism isn't just starting today.
No, it's always at work. It's always at work. But Alex, it's been a great pleasure having you on the Americano podcast. I hope that we can get you on again soon to discuss the radical left, the state of the Republican Party, all sorts of things going on.
There's no shortage of problems to talk about.